Roll call, please.
Sure. Trustee Nala?
Here.
Trustee Meadow?
Here.
Trustee Rule is absent. Trustee Smart?
Here.
Trustee Samari?
Here.
Trustee Suplet?
Here.
President Zick?
Okay, looking around, I don't think we have any public comment unless there's anything to read. Okay, moving on. The item number 1, the 2023 budget timetable. Mike, do you want to walk us through that?
So I'm going to ask Tracy Sarah to join us. She's
okay.
our finance manager, and talk through the timetable first, and then the targets when we get there.
Everybody. Hello. Hello. All right. Okay. So now we're in early June, which means our audited report is going to be issued soon. So we're just about to finally wrap up 2021 and start looking forward to the 2023 budget. So on the timetable in your packets, I've gone ahead and bolded the dates that are really the ones most applicable to you as the board. And the rest are sort of just the key internal deadlines that we use here when we're working with the management team to, pull the budget information together. So this year's timeline is pretty consistent with the budget timeline used last year, just a couple of small changes to point out. So first, on the front end of the timeline, you'll see that the first bolded date is actually today. So lucky you, we get to go over the budget targets momentarily. And the reason for this small timing change is that last year it was done at the board meeting, the June board meeting. The committee of the whole, I think, was just canceled in June of 2021, but that actually probably works out really well because we have a lot of financial information planned for the June board meeting between like the audit review and our variance analysis. So we don't want to put anybody to sleep by adding budget targets to that meeting. So I think this will also give you a little extra time to review everything. Another change to the timeline is more on the back end, where this year's September committee of the whole budget review meeting is actually a week earlier than last year. So we'll just review the budget at that meeting, and as a result, we just have to shift some of those non-bolded internal deadlines just by a couple of days here or there, but we don't anticipate any issues from that, and we're going to communicate that to our management team this week. And then finally, the October board meeting, which is, I believe, where the final budget will be presented for your adoption, is a week later than last year, and that's due to the ILA conference this year. The meeting's pushed back a week. So that just means it's going to be very important for Mike and I and the team to be in constant communication with the village and give them a really good working draft, like a final draft ahead of that time, just so that they can be prepared with all of their requirements for printing and time and everything. So we've added, it's not bolded because it really doesn't relate specifically to the board, but that October 10th deadline is just a reminder for ourselves, like a deadline that we'd like to hit with the village. But that's it. Besides those few minor shifts, everything's pretty consistent. So do you have any questions?
Any questions?
Okay. All right.
Okay. So then, sure.
Moving on to the budget.
Yeah, we'll just go right into the budget targets then. And the long range fiscal plan is also included for you. So I believe at this point, you've all seen these schedules. I'm sure some more than others, but just as a reminder to all of you, I joined the library in late October of last year. So it was my first time reviewing these files, which was kind of fun, which not everybody share the same definition of fun probably, but I thought it was a really good tool based on some of my previous experience. I think it's dynamic. I think it's laid out well. I definitely think it makes sense starting a budgeting process using some of this. So one just general reminder, disclaimer, it is a forecasting tool really only, so it really should be viewed as that sort of starting point of the budget. It will definitely change. It will definitely get refined as we start getting into the actual budgeting and as we receive more information from the various sources of the targets, which you can see they're divided into categories by their source. Some, are set by you, the board. Some are set by, internally via input from administration and management. Some are set by the village, by the government, and by the market. So as things change, we'll of course, keep you informed of anything that, impacts what you're seeing today. That said, the first 5 targets on the page are really derived from the detail in our long range fiscal plan. So I actually would like to start with that file. So that's kind of the more colorful one in the packet. And I don't know if anybody wants to see it via Excel, Mike, you're welcome to pull it up, but we're not going to go into it in super detail. So I think what you have should be sufficient, but so this file shows information about our two funds, the general fund in the top section of the page and our capital projects fund below, and it's across a number of years, past, present, and future. So going across the top, you can see 2 years of actual results, 2020 and 2021, and then 6 years of estimated data. And the estimate for 2022, you can kind of think of that as an estimate based on the current year's approved budget. And then the estimates for 2023 through 2027 are estimates based on the assumptions that are included at the top of the page and in the footnotes at the bottom. It's presented in thousands, and then each column starts with the opening fund balance, then it's going to add revenues, subtract expenditures, and to arrive at an ending fund balance. Midway through the page, you'll see this like very big, bold, highlighted row T, which is a key metric on this file, as I'm sure you know. So we have an unrestricted general fund balance requirement in our policy that says we must keep that fund balance at no less than 4 months or 33% and no more than 9 months or 75% of the coming year's expected annual operating expenditures. So this row, this line T, will tell us if based on the assumptions we're using that you can see here, if we're going to fall within that range over the coming years based on this.
I'm sorry, could you say what was the bottom limit?
33%.
30, so
4 months or 33.
got it, 33 to 79, did you say?
75.
75.
Yeah, a little confusing. I said
Yeah.
4 months, which is 33%.
Got it, okay.
And 9 months or 75%. So as far as some of those key assumptions, up at the top of the page, again, and then some notes at the bottom, but the most important ones are up top. So first at the top, you see we are working under the assumption that we will maintain a 0% tax levy increase for the library over the next 3 years. We understand that's been a highly valued priority by the board, which is fantastic. And then you can also see here that we estimate that operating expenditures will increase 1% next year. So that kind of flows down to the highlighted rows H and I for our operating expenditures. And also included in those rows, just so you're aware, is an additional adjustment in 2023 for personnel costs, which we do expect will increase more than 1%. So we didn't, want to not factor that in here to the plan because we'll talk about that in just a second, but we would expect this to increase at a faster rate. So with expenditures rising a little bit and then our main source of revenue is the property taxes remaining relatively flat, you can kind of see that impact come through that highlighted line T. See in 2021 column, we were at 72%, which is the high end of that range. And then it kind of slowly ticks back down to the middle. And then further out you go, the lower end of the range. So how does that fit into the actual targets? If we flip back to that page, you'll see some of that same information kind of flowing in here. So in line 1, as I mentioned, we're assuming a 0% tax levy increase for the library in our plan. So that's reflected there. And Mike, you can keep me honest, but I believe we've only increased the levy 2 times in the past 13 years. Is that correct? So you can see 2019 would have been the last time that happened.
What was the one before 2019?
It was 0.
No, I think she's saying what year.
Like what
did we
year? So
increase?
2 times, and was it a 1% as well?
Before I got on the board.
Yeah.
More than 1%, wouldn't it be like,
Just
for some reason, I'm thinking, it was like 2015, it was like 1.5%.
Under 2.
Okay, so then in line 2, the maximum operating budget increase, this excludes property and capital expenditures, but then includes everything else from an expenditure standpoint. So you can think of this as sort of like a blended maximum increase in expenditures, and then it's sort of comprised of the other targets below, which might not be 100% clear just based on the format of this schedule, but those other targets sort of roll into that, like kind of all-encompassing one, which you see is estimated right now to be 5.2%. And that is running higher than previous years besides 2020. That was high because of Maker Place, I believe. And we're going to get into some of the reasons, you'll see why it's running higher for 2023 when you look at those component targets full up. So taking those kind of one by one, line 3 is our maximum increase in salary grades. So we do have a salary schedule, schedule of salary ranges for each for each position. And we shift those ranges based on guidance from the market, which is not final yet. It's just very preliminary at this time. It's not finalized until the 4th quarter. But we're using the same benchmarks that are available today that we would have in previous years. So consumer price index data pointing to an unusually large shift of 8.6% in the cost of living adjustment for next year. So since that's been our methodology in the past, we wanted to, be conservative and have that in here as a starting benchmark, as we've done previously. So, but you can see by going across that row 3, how drastically different of a percent that is versus previous years. Shifting the range doesn't necessarily mean that salary dollars are going to increase by the exact same amount or the exact same percentage. But for purposes of developing these targets and the long range fiscal plan, we do use this as a baseline expectation for better or for worse, because we don't currently have any sort of maximum or cap set as far as guidelines were to stop that increase. Moving on to line 4, the increase in budgeted personal services is anticipated to be 5.8%. This is more those salaries and benefits dollars that we're talking about, not the ranges, the actual dollars. And it will include not just salaries, but things like the employer IMRF contribution, the contribution for medical insurance. And so again, you can see how that runs higher and then drives up that amount in row 2, because when you think about it, salaries and benefits are by far the greatest component of our overall expenditures. They're actually 72% of our total expenditures. So it makes logical sense that if salaries and benefits are set to increase 5.8, then our overall increase would be a lot closer to that 5.2% than all other expenditures, which, as I mentioned, the long range fiscal plan, and as you can see in row 5, are only set to be 1%.
Hang on one sec. Greg has a question. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I just want to make sure of one thing that we're kind of looking at this. So in line 3, the maximum increase in salary grade. So each salary grade, the max can go up 8.6% based on cost of living increase. But when you're looking at line 4, the 5.8%, that's what we're talking about, that total line, as you're talking about putting everything together, correct? That whole thing would go up by a maximum of 5.6. Is that
Yes.
correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, because if you look back in 2021, we had a maximum increase in salary grades of 5.06, but it was only a 0% because we didn't know what was going on in that particular year. So we wanted to, with our taxes coming in, so we wanted to make sure that we were even with the previous year. Correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We were trying to remain consistent with the cost of living.
Yep. Okay, thanks.
How did if we went up 5.0, that was our maximum, but we didn't do anything? Is that what you're
was the
saying?
highest potential
Right.
grade shift
But
that
we-
we could have gone with. I don't believe we shifted the grades. that
Okay,
percent.
so that's why there's 0% increase.
Yeah, I don't recall exactly what the grade shift was for that year, but the salaries were based off the 0.0% increase in this salary line.
Questions, are we doing a salary survey this year?
We are.
Yes, there is a plan.
So how are we?
So they're saying it could go up that
putting
high,
that
but it
into the
didn't.
plan?
That is also figured in here. So the compensation study will be done probably closer to the end of summer. We don't, it's difficult to plan how that shift is going to affect this. So with that, the high COLA and that as factors, that's why we brought the 8.6%.
So that's still the unknown for us,
Yes.
but we will know it during the planning process. Is what you're saying.
Correct.
We should have it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so again, for both the salary grade shift and for the actual increase in personal costs, there is not currently any sort of max where we cap it. So, it's a bad year and anticipated to not have an increase. We use these sorts of guidelines, but then we're doing it the same way this year when the increase is estimated to be large. So just wanted to point out that there's not currently any sort of cap. And like I was starting to say, line 5 is sort of all those other budget lines, those non-personnel related ones, line items that will work with the managers to keep at no more than 1%, preferably closer to no net increase on those. But again, those are only 28% of our total operating expenditures. So, the overall is going to be closer to that 5% because salaries are such a large component of expenditures. All right, moving on to lines 6 through 8. So these are targets set by the village. And so that includes our employer share of medical insurance, which for the village is expected right now to increase 8%. And then in the line below that, row 7, assessment for accounts payable processing. So this is our annual fee for services provided by the village, and this increases 3% each year. And then row 8 is the employer IMRF rate, which the village administers for us. And as you can see, it's going to actually go down a little bit in 2023. Lines 10 and 11, I'm sorry for the numbering convention is off. There is no number 9. You're not missing it. Lines 10 and 11 are the FICA tax rates for Social Security and Medicare. And so those remained unchanged for many years. Line 12 is our employee assistance plan. So here, this reflects the amount we would pay if we were fully staffed. It's a per position, per employee rate, and it's the same next year as it is this year. We're just showing amounts here as if we were fully staffed. We're planning for being fully staffed.
Why do we budget for part-time employees on that line item?
Because they do have access to the plan, so they can call the phone number and get services that are provided by that.
So all library employees have access to the EA.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
But again, this line will show as if we were fully staffed, but in actuality, the amount we pay will be less based on filled positions. And then in row 13, finally, is our Lira liability insurance premiums. We have reached out to Lira. We haven't gotten any response yet as far as an actual estimate. So we're preliminarily estimating an increase of 20%. Market conditions in the insurance world are tough right now, but they are consistent with what they were last year. And last year, our rates increased only 8%. So I think the 20% is a good conservative estimate for the time being until we get more information from Lira. I think we actually got that in July last year. If we're lucky, maybe we'll have some more by the June board meeting that we can share with you at that time. But
mine just went up 13%, just so you know.
Okay. Yeah. It's a hard market right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, just to pop back over just very quickly to the long range fiscal plan, just at the bottom, since all of that was excluding capital expenditures, I just wanted to point out again that on the bottom, there is a small section on our capital projects fund. And so this factors in on row AE, that blue row, all of the currently planned capital improvements. And we did include a list for you in the packet of what is planned there. I'm sorry, it's very small and hard to read. But this is based on an engineering assessment that is performed every 5 years, coupled with input from the management team and, kind of moving around projects based on what they think needs to be done. So it's constantly, being amended and refined. And this is our most current revision of that, if you're curious about what's coming up.
Question. So when we did this last year, it was a little more new. So now it's sinking in. So as we look to 2027 and the rate or the that ending fund balance does get smaller. So over the years, do we just look as we get closer, and how do we account for that to bring it back up and planning?
Yeah, I think Mike and I have talked about how it's difficult to plan any further out than 5 years because there's just too many unknowns and variables as far as you see all the sources of these targets that kind of are at play. So we do look at a rolling, one of these schedules every year. So you're looking at 2027 right now, but you'll also see 2027 next year, you'll see it the year after, and as we get closer to 2027, it'll be a little bit more accurate, and with still having time to make decisions to impact those numbers.
So that's what it's roll, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of variables that tie into that. And, as you see, as Tracy said, you're looking 5 years out at that 38%. How much we spend out of each budget year does, yeah. So if we don't spend all of our budget, that helps to.
And then
keep that high.
fundraising too, or even contributions from foundation or for library or even grants can help also.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and you have, at least 3 or 4 years advance notice if we see that number getting into dangerous territory where we need to start, looking at that tax levy. Do we need to increase that tax levy? That's really your best way to bring that back up. Of course, we want to keep it at 0%, but
Right,
if we needed to, we could start doing that a few years in advance.
okay.
Yes, Deb, go ahead.
Have we confirmed with Cook County that they are going to maintain the lost cost factor?
I haven't confirmed it. I have it in here as an assumption, but I can confirm.
I think you might want to do that.
Okay.
I've heard some rumblings that might be repealed.
Okay.
Okay.
Like when we keep the tax levy at 0, how do we capture new growth, or is there none?
New growth within the library.
Are the village?
The lost cost does increase us 1% every year.
Mhm.
And then anytime there's a new development, we do get the land dedication money. So that it's not a
Impact
significant
fees?
amount. Yeah,
Yeah.
impact fees, exactly.
But
So-
that's only like a one-shot deal.
Yeah,
That's,
right,
yeah.
right.
So that's what we have to be careful of, as if there is growth,
Mhm.
that we're still using the same dollars and we have no.
But according to the last census, not massive.
Yeah, there wasn't massive in there. You're right. Yeah.
But we have been above expectations on PPRT, correct?
Yes.
So we've been getting additional revenue there also.
Yeah.
And we have
Which-
two very large employers coming into town. So we have that also.
Who's that?
United Technology Center, right, is
Yeah.
moving here. So, that's a big one.
Mhm.
And then we also have, there's some of the new Amazon stores moving up
Right.
to the north side.
Yeah.
And the distribution center they're adding on to down on the north side, so I believe. We have 3 big projects happening in town also.
Can I just throw in one thing real quick too? Oh, hello. One thing too, been looking at that percentage for, 9 years now, and it seems like it's always gets down to about 38%, we get out to 4 or 5 years. But what we've been remarkably good at is holding our costs in line. And that's really done a good job to keep that percentage being right where it is. So not saying that, past figures, numbers mean anything to where we're going in the future, but I will say that we've always done a great job at keeping that number, really doing good in our costs of keeping that number always in that, say around that 60%, 65% range.
Well, and know that 9 months is pretty high. 4 to 6 months is usually, 3 to 6 months is usually the norm. And so to have 9 months is more than ample.
Mhm. And we're in our 3rd year of the current tax assessment, correct? So next year is a reassessment. Is that true?
Oh, I don't keep track.
I think so.
That sounds right.
You might want to ask that too.
Okay.
Okay, I
So
think
we
so.
just had the reassessment.
Huh?
So we just had.
I think the reassessment's next year on property values. You might just want to confirm that.
Okay.
Just to help you out. I have to know that stuff.
Kill the messenger.
Oh, I have.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, item 3, review issuance of non-resident library cards and non-resident card fee. Something that has to be done annually.
Yes, so this is our annual renewal of the non-resident library card offering and fee. So as in past years, we continue to use the general mathematical formula to formulate the costs for a non-resident to purchase the card. This year, the non-resident fee will be $442, down slightly from last year, which was $454.
Such a deal.
It is. It is.
Now I have to use that Target to take out as many books and games and do everything with that much
Can I
money.
ask a question? I thought there was perhaps a bill just passed on the non-resident cards in Illinois.
There was.
Yes.
Well, Mike, go ahead, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I don't, has it actually passed?
Yeah, the
You're talking
government
about
signed
Passed at midnight, yeah.
The kids card one? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so that would mean that we would offer, we would waive the fee for children that fit within that.
So we should have that in there.
It shouldn't matter because the law over,
Okay,
basically.
we're not gonna-
Yeah, the law is optional. Boards can opt into issuing
Mhm.
cards for, see, right now, the Kids Card Act requires libraries to give children under 18, as long as they're eligible for the school lunch program, the federal program. This law would then make it optional for boards to embrace all of the
So
children under 18.
Can I be talking about that too? in this
That would be our
context?
policy, our card policy. So I would say that we'll bring that back for discussion. I don't know that that would fit in this. This
Okay.
is just saying that we're going to continue to offer the cards and at this cost, unless the board feels differently.
Okay, I think we're gonna come back and explore that in the policy, right? Okay.
And just so you're aware, as I mentioned, the law supersedes policy. So if we wanted to start acting on it immediately, we could without the policy change. Unless it's a
Right.
board decision that needs to
Well, it
be
has to
taken.
be.
Right, yeah, the board has to
We
adopt
have to
it,
decide,
right,
yeah.
yeah. Any questions on that? No. Move on to the proposed revisions to policy 7.020 makerspace and policy 0.7.021 makerspace kitchen.
Okay, so these policies, the board has seen in the past, we discussed, there were a few changes that you recommended, which we brought back and discussed with the staff. So one of them was to review the amount of time before or in advance of the reservation where people could reserve the space or not reserve the space. So we did talk about that, and the staff felt that it was imperative that we leave in the policy that we require at least that 2 weeks in advance of the event date to reserve the space. Now, they could make exceptions on a case-by-case basis if the room is available, but they said they'd like to keep that in the policy, so they have that to fall back on. Let's see, then we changed the payments to say that the rental is tentative until payment is received. So we will not be confirming that rental until we receive can actually have the payments received for it. And we also removed the power outage or inclement weather statements in, say, the general rental requirements, where it's very specific as to why something might be canceled. I also changed some of the terminology, so makerspace wasn't used in like every sentence. So.
Do we know how much it costs for a homeowner to get their commercial liability insurance for a day? Do you know what that costs? What by chance?
For the commercial, no, I don't.
What it costs for a commercial renter to get $1 million policy?
I don't have that.
I was just wondering how cost prohibitive or not prohibitive that is.
I will.
So for non-commercial renters, it says, and this is in regards to the kitchen, they might be covered under home.
It's an additional endorsement.
Was it like your umbrella insurance?
No, it's just your normal liability insurance. You would-
Premise.
So do you have to call your insurance company before and say, I'm renting a room for an event for 10 people?
And they would list us as an additional insured. And so,
And you need a
Interesting.
certificate then.
yeah, they'll give us
I think
the.
it's like $50 to $75, maybe, I'm not sure. But it would
I
be
don't
nice
think
to
it's
know. It'd be good to know. I think, I can find out when we know.
Okay,
Didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Need to do that.
So I'm sorry, so the individuals add on I'm thinking of PTA when we did it, we would call that the venue would have to add on. I don't think they charge, but it might be different for individuals. So they would they would add on to, insurance company A, whatever, and then bring the proof that they were added at, a maker place was added, Arlington Heights Library was added as a
Additional insurance.
Okay.
Mhm.
Great.
Yep. One other thing that we made change to this policy is there were some very specifics in here, such as use of hair nets and stuff like that. We moved that into the application, the contract that they signed. We felt that it wasn't really appropriate to be in the policy because some of that stuff might change. So there is a reference in here that they must abide by the terms of the agreement in order to be in the space and not in violation of the policy.
When it says alcohol may not be served or consumed unless approved by library administration and in accordance with local and state laws, how does that work? Or what would you approve or?
We verify that it's being done responsibly, that they have a BASSET trained someone serving the alcohol, that, certain measures are taken for the events. They can't leave the building with alcohol, so we would just ensure that they're providing a safe environment to do it. And, some programs may not be the best to have alcohol there, like knife skills or something like that.
Right.
You wouldn't have alcohol
Yeah.
in the kitchen on those times. But a dinner party, you might.
The other thing I'll warn you about that is in Illinois, there's 2 classifications of BASSET licenses.
Mhm.
One is just for beer and wine, and the other one is also for hard liquor. So you want to be very careful on what they're serving, make sure they have the appropriate license.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Under the kitchen rental, the kitchen orientation, how did they do that?
They meet with the staff in advance. They walk them through the location of all the stuff, how to use the dishwasher, how to use the equipment, stuff like that. The guidelines, the rules, all of that. So they'll meet with staff in advance.
Have they received a lot of requests or any requests? Or, I'm sure they've been telling people we're not available yet, but
Yeah, we've had a lot of interest
Yeah.
in it.
good.
So I think it will be quite popular. Oh, great. Good question.
Good, can I have a couple questions?
Yeah.
So in 7.020 under use of space 6, it says organizations or individuals may not use any makers place facilities for ongoing operational activities. How are we going to police that? How are we going to know if they're doing something like that?
Can you identify where that was? 7.020? What was
7.020 under use of space, right in the first page and number 6.
Oh, yes. So that is for if we see repeated users basically having a business at the makerspace for higher production. So they're always using time on the 3D printers or laser cutters. We can say that that's not really for ongoing creation of items.
So is it if they do it more than twice or 3 times?
I'm sorry, what was that, Craig?
So if they do it 2 or 3 or 4 times, how are we going to know that? I get the point, but it sounds like it's a little subjective on how we're actually going to police that and know what's going on.
Yeah, they do sign up for the equipment like the laser cutter, and so we would see over and over again, like if they come in to make, as Carol just said, like 1,000 napkin holders or something like that. We might be able to say that having this in our policy gives us the ability to say that this is really meant for individuals to use and not commercial purposes for people to make it a high volume facility.
Okay, as long as we're comfortable with knowing when that's going to be. And then under the right underneath use of equipment and materials on the same first page on 2, materials for use with fabrication tools. I was looking through this, and if I missed it, I apologize. But what about the thread for sewing or something like that? Should we be including something like that, or should we just go back to saying the make or place tools. So we're encompassing everything that could possibly come up.
Oh, I see what you're saying, because fabrication is not necessarily inclusive of the entire building.
Right. Right.
We can change that back to makerspace tools.
And then I had one other one. I don't know if, are we talking about the kitchen one too, or are we just talking about that one, or both of them at the same time?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so 7.021, I read this like 3 times. If I missed it, I apologize, but I see on the second page there, on the top, number 10, we got rid of kitchen should be left in the same condition. I know we had a discussion about it last time, but I don't remember what the question was, but I kept thinking about cleanup. Is that in the sign-up document that they have to clean it up?
Yes, that's all part of the agreement.
So it's all part of the agreement. So that part of it is all taken care of. Okay. That's all I had. Thanks.
Any questions? All right, thank you.
Okay. I'll move right along. Are there any others to bring up?
25.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I mentioned like just if you have an update.
Oh, yeah. So we've been working with John Keister. He brought us a round of 3 candidates a couple weeks ago, which we interviewed. We didn't find anybody. Well, we did bring, we will be bringing one or two back for a second. And then he brought us another group recently, which we interviewed one, bringing that person back for a second. So we do have some good candidates.
Okay.
Hoping to make a decision fairly soon.
Is there anything that, I don't know, that you can share with us at a future meeting about like the staff survey? You know, like more detail that maybe departments are working on a certain thing or whatever.
Excellent question. So Lisa, our HR manager, is working on a presentation to be brought to this next board meeting with a summary of all the action plans that managers have been working on. So we've been working diligently on that and making sure that every department is doing things based on that feedback.
Got it.
Yeah,
Perfect.
you'll hear more about that at the next meeting.
Just for clarification on the deputy director, you're telling us that you have 2 people that you're bringing in for second interviews.
That's right.
And then the third person, what was that?
We haven't interviewed that other person yet.
Okay, and so when do you think you will have a decision made?
Within probably 2 weeks if the rest of the interviews go well.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, well, what are we at, like 7:38, I think? Is there
Well done.
a motion for adjournment?
I'll move that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's it.
Good.
Well done,
2 weeks from
Carol.
tonight.
Yeah, nice, Carol.
2 weeks from tonight.
Carol, you're very efficient.
This summer
Thank you,
brochure
everybody.
is